Hello friends, it's Kayla. Welcome back to my kitchen/office. Today we're going to talk about my least favorite books that I read in 2020. So I went ahead and pulled my 20 lowest rated books of the year. These are all 1 and 2 stars. And I'm also integrating Tier Maker and TikTok into this video because if I distract you by how trendy I am, maybe you'll be less mad at me for bashing popular books. Just kidding, no bashing involved, we're just having fun. And a fun stat I can throw at you right off the bat is 10 out of these 20 books I didn't select for myself. If you're new here, you might not know that I do a lot of fun TBRs where other things choose what I read, and a lot of times it doesn't go well, but it's all fun, it's all for content, it's silly, we're keeping it light. So the majority of these books I'm just gonna answer like they weren't for me. They're probably for so many people. But either I didn't know what they were going in, misunderstood what they were going in, they just didn't meet my personal expectations, and it's not a big deal. My tiers are as follows. If you don't know these trendy TikTok sounds, this is all just gonna look so weird. Top tier is... So this tier is for books that either started out well and quickly started to decline, or I went into thinking they were one thing and quickly realized that they weren't. Next tier is...
Where's the flavor? Where's the flavor in this? I don't taste anything. I don't taste sugar.
This category is reserved for books that I found really bland and boring. And I'm worried about it because some people might disagree. Tier 3 is... You can just imagine me nervous laughing when talking about these because I don't want to piss anybody off, but they were shit. My next tier is...
But you did this for what?
Why not?
Why?
Why not?
Why though?
So basically a book I just didn't understand why it did what it did. And my final tier.
Because it's disrespectful to you. It is disrespectful for one woman.
And I don't think this tier really needs any more of an explanation. We're gonna start with some softballs, ones that I don't think will make people that angry, books that clearly like have an audience, but I'm not part of it. The Regrets by Amy Bonifants. I was intrigued by this because I like books that have something to do with ghosts, and this promised romance, reality and dreams colliding, dark, playful love affair, life and death. I quickly realized this is not exactly what I was expecting or wanting. It was really gross. I can see how it's about human connection and it's about getting lost in the other person, but it's just like ghost sex for hundreds of pages, and I did not enjoy reading it. I didn't hate it, I just didn't get it. And that's on me for not fully knowing what I was getting into. Next up is We Were Restless Things by Cole Negamatsu, which is also about ghosty things. We're following a teen who's new to town and he quickly discovers that there is somebody who recently drowned, but it's in a forest where there's no water, and there's apparently an invisible lake, and there's a cast of characters who are all teaching him what happened and falling in love with each other. I'm popping this into You Did This For What? Which now thinking about it sounds so much harsher than I want it to. You know, this is a long book. It's full of beautiful language. I understand that authors put their heart and soul into their books, so I don't want to take anything away from what this book did, but I just don't understand the choices of where the book went. We're focused so much on this romantic relationship between like future step siblings. It didn't get dark enough. It didn't get funny enough. It didn't get weird enough. But then there was nothing else to really pull me in. Like, I wanted it to be so much more fantastical than it was. And all of the storylines and what was happening between all of the characters and all the history that we learn, it just wasn't interesting. It didn't go anywhere. I feel like there were so many opportunities and avenues that it could have gone down and explored, but just stayed at a pretty uninteresting level. But I really did adore the writing and the perspectives. So I'll pick up more from this author, but I was super let down because I had hyped this up way too much for myself. Next up, we've got The Foxhole Court by Nora Sakovic. And even though this is one of the highest averagely rated books of this stack, I still consider it an easy one to go with just getting into this list because I do think that the audience and the fans of the Foxhole Court and All for the Game, the series, are self-aware enough to realize it has its problems and that it's not for everyone. This is a story of a boy named Neil and a game called Xe, and him starting fresh in a new place and making friends and overcoming his past. He has secrets, there's murderous things in the past, and it's hard to decide if this should go into or if it should go into it is disrespectful, because it is disrespectful. This series has a lot of problems, and even though I gave this 2 stars, yeah, I was hooked. Yeah, I picked up the 2nd and 3rd book in the series. I haven't read the 3rd yet. I do think the series gets better, but the mishandling of mental health and drug use and sexuality is a little too much to overlook to put it in any other category. I think we all recognize this is a whole mess, and I probably shouldn't have read it to begin with, but I will still finish the series. Next up is Dead to Her by Sarah Pinborough, which is about 2 couples and jealousy and business and murder. And considering there's a death in here, like, it was so boring. But I definitely can't put it anywhere except it is disrespectful, because a book that uses race, sexuality, disability as plot twists is not cool in my book. At this point in my reading journey with mysteries and thrillers, I just consider certain things kind of lazy and prefer a little more self-awareness and thoughtfulness to go into the twists and turns of what I'm reading. Next up is The June Boys by Court Stevens, which was one of my most anticipated books of the entire year. I really commend this author for trying so many types of stories. I love some of them, I hate some of them. This conceptually is so interesting, the idea that there's a kidnapper who kidnaps a group of people every year for 1 full year and then just releases them. It's like, what's the point? What's the secret? What's the mystery? Unfortunately, with how the book progressed, I have to pop this into you did this for what? Because I really don't think that the time and attention was put into the plotting of this story. A lot of things genuinely do not make sense, and I think by accident. Again, this is a book that I look at and I see so much potential and so many different avenues this story could have gone down, and it didn't explore any of the things that I was expecting. I love the relationship dynamics in here, which is why it was still a 2-star as opposed to a 1. I still enjoy the writing, I just don't think that it was crafted properly. Next is Platform 7, another book about ghosts. I promise I don't hate all haunting afterlife type stories, but I guess a lot of them also just don't work for me. We're following the deaths of 2 different characters on the same railway and discovering what really happened. And considering this is a book about ghosts and mystery, like, it could not have been more boring. So it's going in, where's the flavor? Where's the intrigue? Like, nothing was keeping me interested and hooked. I only completed it because it was a selection for the Literally Dead book club, and I'm sorry I made all of you read it. It was still fun to discuss, and I know some of you really enjoyed it, so I don't regret it at all. It was just unfortunately my least favorite book from my own book club this year. It might have also been the audiobook that really ruined it for me, because I was just listening to an abusive man essentially gaslighting me for 6 hours. Next up, you knew that the Book of Joan was going to be on here. This is my least favorite book of the year. And how do I explain what this is about? It's about future environmentalism and biofeminism, and there are some different stories in here about iconic people, like inspired by Joan of Arc. I think I really do understand what this book was trying to do. It was trying to be a social commentary, and it was trying to show, like, it was trying to have conversations about gender and sexuality and religion and race, and how all of these things are a construct I definitely can't put it anywhere but it is disrespectful, because I think it really contradicted itself throughout the book, and it didn't really know what it was trying to say. It was very reductive. It was offensive. Again, it used gender and sexuality as a plot twist, which like just I don't enjoy. And the thing is, I can disagree with a book. I can disagree with what the story is saying. I can disagree with a character. Like, I don't think that the way that characters behave is a reflection of how the author behaves or thinks. But I just think what this book had to say and how it went about it was the opposite of the intention, and it was not as progressive as it was trying to be. I'm getting a little flushed and nervous because we're getting into books that like people really enjoy, but I do think we're all on the same page here. These just weren't for me. If they're for you, I'm like genuinely really happy for you. Of the 180 books I read this year, the fact that I only hated 20 is pretty sweet. So the next one is Baby Teeth by Zoe Stage. This is about an evil child and a fed up mother trying her best to figure out what's going on with her child. And I have to put this into, you did this for what? I don't get it. I don't understand the tone of the book. I also went into it thinking it was going to be more of something, either like more evil, more supernatural, more of like a hallucinate. Like I thought the book was trying to trick me in some way. I thought there was going to be some reveal, but it was just the same repetitive scene for like hundreds and hundreds of pages, and nothing came out of it in the end. I have watched multiple reviews for this book, so like I do get how other people like this and what they like about it. I can't get there. Next up are two super highly rated adult romances, and I actually don't even want to talk about them because I don't have a good reason for disliking them. I unfortunately don't have a tier for like, I respect it. It's just not something that I should have ever read. So I'm gonna pop the Flat Share and Red, White, and Royal Blue into The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary is about two people who share a flat. One of them at night, one of them in the day. They share a bed, they exchange notes, they get to know each other. And Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston is about royalty and the son of the president of the United States and their hate to love romance, which just happened way too fast. I didn't understand the pace of that book. I didn't personally get the chemistry between either couple, but also I don't read adult romance. I don't know what I'm looking for in an adult romance. That's why I'm not gonna shit on these books, even though I put them in the shit category. That's not truly how I feel about them. I really do understand that people enjoy them. They have great ratings, and I'm dead inside. Like, that's all there is. I absolutely hated the writing of half of this book, the perspective from the male character, whatever his name was. I thought it was too cold, it was too distant, it was just a little off. But you could argue all of the reasons why that made sense for his character, and that's fine. And then the relationship in Red, White, and Royal Blue. I have liked a lot of books with romance integrated into the plot. I have loved a slow burn romance. I have loved a hate to love romance, but neither of these books had anything else that I really cared about. And I really don't have much of an explanation. I just said I didn't want to talk about them, and then I continued to talk about them, and I'm sorry. Next up is On the Road by Jack Kerouac, another book I don't want to talk about anymore. Here's the thing about On the Road. It's about a guy and a road trip and the wild abandon that he experiences. I want to put it in... Oh no, I want to put it in, I would put it in any category, but I know that if I don't put it in, it's disrespectful. I will get comments telling me it should have been in It Is Disrespectful. This is a product of its time, and I really just like don't want to encourage the conversation about like classics by white men and how they're so important and how it doesn't matter that it has all of these slurs and that it treats everybody horribly, and like you can't judge a book that came out in that time period, blah 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 blah, because I see where that conversation comes from. And I also see where the conversation comes from that's like, this book is problematic and shitty and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I think I can see from both sides. I understand its impact on literature and why you might want to read it for that. But as far as just like reading a book about a road trip, I would recommend hundreds of other books, simply because I don't think that it's an enjoyable experience in this day and age to read about the drug use and sexual habits and slurs of this guy for this long. Because honestly, there's nothing else in it that's, not that those things are interesting, but there's nothing that interesting about the actual story itself, current day. I don't know, I think this edition is really pretty, so there's that. Next up, let's do Annihilation. I read the first book in the Southern Reach trilogy, and it had a lot of elements that I should have enjoyed. I honestly like can barely talk about the plot of this book. I just have to pop it into Oh No, because it started out interestingly. I heard it was weird, science fiction, fantastical things, scientists going on a mysterious expedition, and it just did nothing for me. I didn't like the pace of it. I didn't get the point of it. I thought the flashbacks were poorly timed. I didn't understand the purpose of the lack of somewhat being grounded in reality. Like, I just needed something to hold on to besides just pure weirdness. This is when I do understand why people like it, and I do understand why it was recommended to me, which is why I read it. But I don't know, like maybe one day I'll complete it, maybe one day I'll watch the movie. I could completely sing a different tune in the future about this whole thing. But for now, it was one of my least favorite things that I read this year. Moving on to The Poison Garden by Alex Marwood. This is apparently a psychological thriller. And I don't know if it was like the marketing of the book or my interpretation of the marketing of the book that's the issue here, because this was not what I had hoped for at all. I previously read a book from her and I remember really liking it, and I think I just need to read a few more books to really know if this author is for me, because for a book that's about like a cult and a poison garden, like it could not have been more boring. I have to pop it into Where's the Flavor, because nothing in this book, none of the characters, none of the plot lines like did much for me at all. And I think maybe just books following the fallout of a cult probably just aren't for me, and like the impact that they had on certain characters and how they go about living their life afterwards. I feel like I've read a couple books in that vein and I don't remember liking any of them, but I just thought this book was going to take place in some different places and the focus would be just much more interesting to me, and it wasn't. But this is another one I really get why people might like. Like, if you look at my list of favorite mystery thrillers of the year, they are over the top, they're ridiculous, they're just a lot. And the slower, more general fiction books that I rarely pick up to begin with, I often don't like. So like, this just wasn't set up for me anyway. That one's definitely on me because I should have just looked into it more before reading it. Next up, we've got The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins, which is one of the highest rated books I think on this list, averagely. So I'm sorry I didn't love it. I appreciate that so many of you recommended it to me, especially because one of my favorite books of all time is Middle Game by Sean McGuire, and I do see the ties between the two and why you might have assumed this would be a favorite book for me. I'm gonna pop it into The Laughter because it started out in a weird way, and I think I like weird books, but it was confusing for so long that I don't understand the purpose behind it, and I don't think the payoff was good enough to justify just being confused for hundreds of pages. We're following, I don't even know, I haven't thought about this book since I put it down. Librarians and death and talking animals. We've got the allure of godhood and being all-knowing. But I just genuinely like I didn't get it. I wasn't on board at any point. Ooh, next up, I've got Goodnight Beautiful by Amy Molloy. My most disappointing book of the entire year because it started out so strong. So the first half of this book I've talked about again and again was 5 stars. I think it pulled off a few of my absolute favorite twists in a mystery. I love what this book did, and then it turned into a retelling of another book. I'm actually gonna add a whole new category just for this book.
I said I love you and I wish I never did. What? I swear to God, I swear to God, you stupid.
This book is about a therapist and his wife, and they move back to his hometown, and he's getting a new client base, and his sessions can be heard through the floor, and then he goes missing. The setup was intriguing. I loved the first half, and I said in my vlog, this is going to be one of my favorite books of the year. This is going to be one of my most recommended thrillers of my entire life. And I wish that I never claimed that because it just completely let me down. And it doesn't belong anywhere else. Because objectively, this book should not have gotten 2 stars from me. But I was so disappointed and so angry about what it did that I can't give it any higher of a rating. But I still absolutely recommend it. I think the twists are worth it. I really want to see other people's reaction to it because I loved where it was going. And also, if you haven't read the book that this was inspired by, aka stole the entire plot from, then it probably won't impact you as negatively as it did me. So it's not that it did anything objectively wrong. It was not a terrible book, and it didn't make terrible decisions. But for me, with how much I desperately loved it, it completely let me down because it didn't continue on the incredible trajectory that it was on. Okay, just a few more to go. Survivor Song by Paul Tremblay. I have a mixed history with Paul Tremblay, and I was apprehensive to go into a zombie book, and for a zombie book, it could not have been more boring. Again, I don't know what I'm even looking for in a zombie book, and I understand like why, probably the friendship being the focus and it being an exploration of these 2 women coming together and their kind of like road trip and survival. I understand why that's the focus, but that's definitely not what I was looking for, so no. Next is The Vegetarian by Hong Kang. I really wanted to enjoy this. This is about a woman who has a dream and becomes a vegetarian due to it, but it's not really what it's about. It's not about vegetarianism. It's about, well, I don't know. It's about getting control of your life. It's about how everybody in her life views her. It's about the descent into madness. It had a lot of interesting qualities and things that I should have enjoyed. So that's why I have to put it into oh no, because as I was reading, I realized it wasn't going to be a book that I connected with, even though it was perfectly weird. I just didn't like the things that the book did. I think I can acknowledge the overall themes. I just don't know if it was successful for me by using the devices that it did to say the things that it was trying to say. Next up, you might be shocked to see The One on here. I really should have put the entire selection series on here because this was the worst idea of a reread I've probably ever done, and it's gonna go into, I mean, it could go anywhere. I'm gonna put it in oh no, because as I decided to reread the first 3 books in the series this year, because like, was the movie was gonna come out, or it was being, is it still being made, or was it a TV show? I've blocked it out now, and I actually can't tell you what it was about The One specifically that didn't work for me, but the selection series is about a prince who is choosing a wife. Embarrassingly, no, I did not read this as a teenager and fall in love with it, and it's been like a nostalgic read. I read it for the first time at like 24, 25, and immediately considered it my guilty pleasure series. Gave it all 5 stars. Understood why people hated it, but thought it was just like so fun and silly and people were taking it too seriously. Upon my first reread of it, 4 or 5 years later, however long it's been, I realized that no, I just had not read many good books in my adult life, and the selection is not good. Not even in a fun, nostalgic, guilty pleasure kind of way. Like, it's just genuinely not that good. And I feel like everybody knows that. I'm not trying to have a hot take here. I'm just recognizing my own, I don't know, problems. Next up is Two Can Keep a Secret by Karen M. McManus, which I don't have. I borrowed from the library. It was for a video. I absolutely never would have picked it up for myself. I didn't like it. No one is surprised. And I'm going to pop it into the ha 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 because mysteries always appeal to me in some way. So like when I first started the book and it was about a girl moving to a new town, living with her grandma, which is like the beginning plot of 90% of YA mysteries. I was like, okay, like let's see where it goes. People have been missing, there have been deaths, and like maybe this will be one of the few YA mysteries that I connect with. I was down to give it a go. And it just turned out to be really predictable and really simple and basic, and that's fine because I'm not the designated audience anyway, and I did not go into it with high expectations. So I still think the audience for it, who's like fans of Pretty Little Liars, I think people like it. It has really high ratings. I don't recall it doing anything offensive or terrible. It just wasn't for me. And lastly, maybe actually my most controversial one here, besides the adult romance, is Devolution by Max Brooks, because this ended up pretty high on the Goodreads Choice Awards. I probably wouldn't have ever read this on my own. It is about a town that is like really environmentally conscious, and that's the only thing I found interesting about it, was like the area they were living in and all of the advancements that they were taking on to like be self-sustainable and all that stuff. But then obviously it was like a Bigfoot Sasquatch type story, which is not something that I probably want to read to begin with. And I'm going to controversially put it in Where's the Flavor, because I thought for a Bigfoot story it couldn't have been more boring for me. Not that I've read a lot, not that I think you shouldn't read it. I just think the book completely lacked tension because of the way that it was written in the journal entry style. I definitely wasn't interested enough in learning about the creatures that would have kept my attention. The way that the characters behaved, interacted, the dialogue was just not it. But neither was the last book I read from him. So I think it's just a me thing, obviously because of the pretty high average rating it has. I would still recommend. So that's it. Those are my least favorite things that I read this year. I'm not calling them worst. I'm calling them my least favorites. I hope you enjoyed getting to learn about them, and I hope you enjoy getting to learn about my favorites of the year tomorrow, which no, I still have not figured out. Yes, I am panicking about, but hopefully I'll see you tomorrow with that. So keep an eye out and I will see you later. Bye.